We set off as full-time travelers in November 2022 after selling and donating everything we own. I remember the first night in Milan when I had a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, realizing that I would never sleep in my own bed ever again. Since that time, we've slept in 100 different beds over the course of more than 860 nights. I've not really had that feeling again.
Choosing the right accommodations where you can feel safe and comfortable, feel like you're getting a good night's sleep, can be a daunting task. We've worked this out over the past couple of years and feel pretty confident about our techniques. We'll take you through all the steps you need to know to pick accommodations in any place in the world.
I'm Judy.
And I'm Kevin. Welcome back to Finding Gina Marie, where we share our lives as full-time travelers and the connections we make along the way.
There will be times when we just need a place to sleep that's close to the airport, but the other 99% of the time, we focus on three main criteria. The first is location, the second is price, and the third is comfort.
We're assuming you already have your destination picked out, but if you're looking for a beach vacation and you've booked a place that's an hour away from the beach, it's going to be a disappointing trip because you're going to spend all your time traveling to the beach. Now, we're looking for central parts of the city, central historico, places with architecture, with history, with a lot of activities close by where we can walk to them. And that's what we look for when we're picking accommodations. So we have to make sure that the location matches our expectations.
We talk about all of this in our video about how to prevent the wrong location or accommodations from ruining your travel. If you haven't seen it, it's in the description below.
And if you're interested in how we plan our destinations, you can check out the two videos we have linked below.
We think location plays a critical role with how happy you'll be with your experience, and it's one of our primary considerations. We are very thoughtful on how willing we are to compromise on this aspect of our travel experience. Of course, we think safety is one of the most paramount things, but beyond that, we also want to choose an area that's walkable.
We also want to make sure that the area is close to points of interest that we want to visit. And we want to make sure that it's kind of a mixed living situation where there's businesses and residential and shops and groceries and just everything in the same area. We don't like to be out in a residential area, and every time we book that, we felt disappointed that it's a travel into the city center. If the city is large, we want to make sure that our accommodations are close to public transport. And if it's noisy, like street noise or something like that, it really doesn't bother us. This may be a big concern for you, but for us, we can sleep through anything. We lived on a very busy San Francisco street and it didn't bother us at all.
As far as price, we aren't budget travelers, but we do have a budget, and we are very mindful of the cash flow that it's going to cost for various accommodations. We're willing to pay more to be in the city center because we don't want to have to be commuting to the area that we want to spend the most time in.
And we're okay with basic accommodations. We're not looking to stay in a high-end suite in a luxury hotel chain. Even with points, those can be very expensive.
Our accommodations over the last 2.5 years have cost us an average of $85 a night. Now that price is offset by the fact that we've stayed in 47 Airbnbs, averaging only $55 a night. If you exclude those, by staying in hotels, we've averaged about $102 a night.
Knowing these numbers helps us keep a baseline, and we figure out whether a place is too expensive using that baseline. If you're just getting started with traveling, you can use our numbers and figure out whether this is in your budget or not. Of course, you're going to pay more if you're in a touristy area, so base your prices accordingly.
As far as comfort, we aren't really looking for a huge spacious space, so we're fine staying in a studio apartment. If that's important to you to have a separate bedroom, just make sure that when you're looking at all of the details of your accommodations, that you're factoring in what the square feet are.
In a perfect world, we'd love to have a kitchen, a couch, and a washing machine because we want to make sure on a longer stay that we can wash our clothes. If we can't have that, we'll give that up and go with the other two. Now, a couch is kind of important because we do a lot of work editing videos. We need a place to stay and sit and work. Sitting on a bed isn't the perfect thing for extended periods of time. A kitchen is less important if we're in an area that we aren't planning to cook. Maybe it's like Southeast Asia where we're eating out most of the time. We didn't need a kitchen. But in a lot of places, having a kitchen saves us money. We can go to the grocery store, cook our own food, and that becomes more important.
We'd love to know what your priorities are when you're choosing accommodations. Let us know in the comments. Last week we shared a video comparing the different platforms we use and the pros and cons of each. If you've missed it, it's linked in the description below. For the purpose of this video, however, we're going to focus on Booking.com. We like that platform because it allows you to book long stays of more than 28 days. It has a wide variety of accommodations you can choose from. It has loyalty points, and overall, we think it's a good, solid platform to walk you through.
But this video is not sponsored by anybody. This is just our method for booking accommodations and what we use.
We've never had a property cancel on us, but if that's one of the things that you're concerned about, under the terms of their agreement, a property is required to offer you a suitable alternative, and if that doesn't work, Booking will help you rebook somewhere else, even if it costs more, and they'll refund the difference. There are full guidelines on their website if you want to read through the fine print.
If you're interested in seeing how we book accommodations through Airbnb, let us know in the comments below. We've saved over $33,000 just by using Airbnbs alone. Now let's walk through our process. Our first step is to research neighborhoods. We do this before anything else.
Let's use Buenos Aires, Argentina as an example because it has a lot of options to consider. We follow the same basic steps for everywhere in the world. Once we decide where we want to go, I start with an internet search for the best neighborhoods to stay in for first-time visitors. Sometimes I'll add for history and culture or safest neighborhoods. Nowadays, there's typically an AI overview that I'll read. Here, you can see it mentions Palermo Soho and Recoleta. If I scroll down more, it mentions San Telmo, La Boca, and Puerto Madero. I'll take a look at each of these, and I'll also look at the listings that pull up from Reddit and TripAdvisor and various blog articles and other trusted traveler sites. We'll read through the pros and cons if they list them. Recent articles are obviously more important to us because cities and safety can change, and a review or recommendation from 10 years ago won't accurately reflect its current state. So we'll skip these TripAdvisor options from 2010 and 2013. Puerto Madero doesn't really appeal to us because it's got modern high-rises and is relatively new. We're more interested in history. Also, it talks about luxury living, which really isn't our thing either. Let's consider what it says about Recoleta. We like that it has a European feel and that it's surrounded by history. I also like that it has an art scene and is close to this famous art museum. We're not necessarily interested in the luxury aspect of it, but it sounds like it has less of a focus on luxury than Puerto Madero. But let's check out St. Telmo. It's got a lot that we like. Cobblestone streets and the fact that it's the oldest residential neighborhood is a cool claim to fame, but is it too residential for us? There's a lot of positive feedback about both St. Telmo and Recoleta. We're also seeing Palermo come up again. But I like what I'm reading about Recoleta. I like the reference to authentic, charming neighborhoods with elegant cafes and shops, and also how it is a bit more central. In this instance, though, I really don't think we'll be unhappy whether we choose Palermo Soho or Recoleta.
Now that we know what neighborhood we want, let's look at the process of filtering down to the actual accommodations we want to choose.
It's easier for us to look through accommodations using our computers versus our phones, so we're going to start there first. Mobile rates sometimes are different, but we'll check those later. If you're not already part of Booking.com's loyalty program, you'll want to sign up to get a 10% discount. You can earn bigger discounts, free upgrades, and free breakfast at certain properties as your status increases. Make sure you're logged in when you're looking at prices. I put in the city, the dates, and the number of people. Booking.com doesn't always have the ability to narrow down to every neighborhood, but in this case it does. You may get a different rate for one person versus two, so make sure you've accurately represented the number of people in your party. While you can sometimes type in your neighborhood name instead of just the city, I prefer not to do that. I'd rather see the highlighted section of the city when I'm in map view. You can see here how it compares when you do it in the neighborhood in the main selection versus as a filter. The more filters you put in, the harder you might make it to find the best property. And while our perfect destination is typically an apartment, we'll make do with a hotel on shorter stays. So we prefer not to limit ourselves, especially when we're trying to get a handle on what the price ranges will be. Your view may be different than ours because we have popular filters that Booking.com is used to seeing us use or that are popular. If you don't have this section, you can still make your choices in the filtered section called Find Properties. We don't rent a car, travel with pets, or need any of the other amenities in this section. Some people like a fitness center or a 24-hour front desk, but you may end up paying more for both of those amenities. We don't care about bed preference personally, and even twin beds can typically be pushed together unless you're very tall. We always want to have a private bathroom, which will eliminate some hostels, which is fine because we don't typically book them. Depending on the time of year, we'll choose air conditioning and heating. We'll be willing to compromise on places that only have a fan, but maybe not August in Italy. And places like Peru don't typically have central heating, so you might want to understand some of the customs in the places you're visiting. Wi-Fi is nearly everywhere, but we'll still add a filter to include it. While we like free cancellation, we're willing to pay for it at times, so we don't want to filter for it now. No prepayment is nice, but again, unless our cash flow is an issue, we still want as many options as possible at this stage. And while we prefer apartments or entire homes and apartments, for now we're going to leave that off, just so we can see what the price range is for the area. We're fine staying in a studio, so we leave bedrooms at 0. Depending on where we're headed, we may filter the review score to a 9+, but for now, we'll just select 8+. We'll never book a 7. That's about it for the filters we put in initially. Notice at this point, we haven't filtered by price yet. We want to see what the prices look like with what we've already inputted, which we think are pretty broad options. The sort order of all the aggregators is partly based on how much they're paid, but also tied to popular properties and previous properties you've booked on the platform. Mostly, we're interested in seeing what the map view looks like, so we can walk through the properties by price. If I'm looking at dates in the immediate future, a lot of properties won't be available and it's less of an issue. But when you have a long lead time, it can be a lot to scroll through. And if you're interested in a neighborhood that you can't filter for, using the map view is going to be even more important. Here we know we want to be in Recoleta, so I'll set the filter to that neighborhood. You can see there's a wide assortment of properties with prices, but you can also see all these properties only showing pins. Those have no prices because they aren't available during our time frame. If I couldn't find anything in my price range, I might choose to adjust my dates. Instead, for now, I'm going to add a filter in the availability section to only see available properties. If there were only a few properties available, and if I had some flexibility on the timing of our travels, I might sort through these and consider adjusting my dates. This is something I rarely do, but sometimes I at least run through our options. Here in this example, which is for a 30-day stay, you can see the prices range from $4,000 on the high end to $757 on the low end. We've learned that our average accommodation spend is about $102 per night, but our average overall is $85 if we include Airbnbs. But by the looks of things, there are a lot of less expensive properties here, which makes sense because Buenos Aires is generally a more affordable place for accommodations. Our average cost of $85 per night breaks down to $2,550. But let's see if we can book something less than that, especially for a month-long stay in South America. Typically, we'd reserve that price point for short stays or for a more expensive city. For now, I'm going to bring in the price filter to show only properties under $90 per night and see what we get.
When selecting accommodations, reviews are really important to us. We try reading reviews all the time and we look for the newest reviews first. It doesn't matter if it's 5 years old and they didn't like the internet service back then. What's the problem today?
And when there are complaints, we really take those seriously. We understand that there are a lot of people who are very picky about circumstances, but we try to put ourselves in those shoes to see if those concerns are ones that we would have as well. We also like to compare the rating on Booking.com or any of the aggregators against the same property on Google. Sometimes those numbers can be very different, and I'm always a little bit cautious if something on Booking is rated a 4.6 and it's a 3.9 on Google. In theory, all reviews should be verified, but we still like to double check that information.
So how do we finalize our choices for accommodations? First thing we do is we look at pictures because it's really important to see exactly where we're going to be. Now, the places that raise red flags for me are the ones that have 5 or 6 pictures of the inside of the accommodations and then 20 pictures of the surroundings, sites to go see, things to look at. It's like, no, I want to see the kitchen from a couple different angles. I want to see the bedroom from a couple different angles. We need to verify that we have the space we expect to be paying for.
I'm not really interested in all of the decor. I really want to see all of the relevant things that I'll be leaning on while we're there.
You don't want the 12 pictures of knickknacks on the shelf?
No. I'd actually prefer that there were no knickknacks.
That's true. We've gone through reviews early in the process, but we do double check those to make sure we haven't missed anything. Last minute checks for internet speed, last minute check for any complaints that we might have not seen the first time around. We also like to make sure that our accommodations have good lighting because we like to be in a bright space. Waking up in a cave is not something we're fond of doing. And verifying that if we expect to cook in a place, the kitchen has actual cooktop. And if we want to put something in an oven, it better have an oven too.
We also like to know whether we're going to get a full-size refrigerator and maybe even a freezer versus one that's just a mini fridge, especially if we're doing a long stay and we think we might do a lot of cooking and have a lot of leftovers.
If there are things that you look for in accommodations or techniques that you have that we haven't mentioned, please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll start with this higher-end property listed for $2,126. It's got an 8.4 overall rating and a location score of 9.6. Both of those are decent numbers. We also like that it has 100 reviews. We'll typically skim through this about this property section. We like that it has a terrace and balcony, even though those are nice to have and not need to have items for us. There's this section that at the end mentions that couples rate it at 9.6, which is a great number. On the apartment type, it has 2 sofa beds, which is cool, more than we need, but great. We may not need AC in September, but it's good to know it has it. We'll also need to factor in a few dollars for taxes of $3 per night or another $90. This is starting to bring us to the upper end of our price point. Facilities here are just average. I do like how bright it is. And under house rules, it says the check-in times are a bit limited, from 2 to 10 p.m. That's not ideal, but it could work depending on what our arrival time is. Overall, I don't think I'm actually loving the property for the price. Let's move on to something that's somewhere in the middle of the price range. Here's something for $1,712. It's got a 9.5 overall rating and a 10 for location, and it also has over 100 reviews. It mentions a 24-hour front desk, which we don't need, but we know some people like. The couple's rating is 9.9, which is awesome. It mentions an apartment type that upper floors are accessible by elevator. We'd probably want to check on that because it means you might need to climb some stairs. We don't generally mind doing that, but when we stay in the historic center, some old buildings don't have elevators at all. We've done 6th-floor walk-ups and we don't recommend them. Let's look at a few photos. The room has nice windows and is bright. We see a washing machine in the building. We prefer a full kitchen with a full-size refrigerator when we're somewhere for a month, but let's move on to the rest of the story here. Free cancellation is a feature we like, but below that it says pay the property before arrival and no credit card needed. Let's dig into that because that's confusing. On our way down, I see that Wi-Fi is excellent, staff are great, comfort is good, the clean rating is outstanding, and so is the location. The value is high, which indicates that you're getting a fair price for the amenities it offers. Let's keep scrolling down to house rules. You can see there's a hiccup. This property only accepts cash. That's tough, especially in a country like Argentina that throttles how much you can take out of an ATM at a time. So you'll need to bring $1,700 in cash with you just for these accommodations. We like a lot of the rest, but that's a tough one. Let's see what the other properties are here. So let's dig into this one. It's got an overall rating of 9.3 and a location score of 9.6 and 82 reviews. Those are all good numbers. There's a sun terrace, and it's rated by couples at a 9.5. Great and great. There's an additional cost for taxes, but there's that pesky no credit card needed again. The guest review scores all are decent. Wi-Fi at 9.0, staff, cleanliness, comfort, all of them. Also, this property shows a check-in time between 12:30 p.m. and 9 p.m. and that you have to let the property know in advance when you'll be checking in. That means they might charge a fee for after hours, or at a minimum, they'll need to make arrangements for someone to meet you. That's not typically a problem, but you might want to connect with the property about that if you have any concerns. Yep, here scrolling down, you can see that this property only accepts cash. This is a cheaper property, but still, do we want to be carrying around that much cash? We are worried about this maybe being a trend, so we looked through a lot of the properties and we noticed the majority of them that weren't hotels required cash. You'll notice that you can even filter the reservation policy to book without a credit card. Unfortunately, there's no way to filter out those cash-only properties. Let's check out this property for $1,746. It's got an overall score of 9.1 and a 9.6 location score, but it only has 7 reviews. That's not a lot. Because we've been burned several times, let's verify that this property takes credit cards. It does. Staff is rated only a 7.9, and that's not great. The other scores are decent, but let's read these few reviews. Valeria from Argentina didn't give this a good score. There's some confusion about parking not being free, but since we won't be renting a car, I'm going to disregard that. I just don't like the fact that there is some inconsistency. We're going to move on from this property. Let's try this property for $1,580. Its overall score is 8.6, and it has a 9.5 location score. And while the 8.6 isn't as high as some, it also has over 1,300 reviews. You'll never be able to please everyone, and the more reviews someplace has, you can usually expect the overall score to drop a bit. We like the amenities in the overall section. It's got AC, again, a kitchenette versus a kitchen, and a bidet. There's also a terrace, which is a bonus. The swimming pool is closed during our visit, but we hadn't planned to swim, so that doesn't matter. Check-in times are fine. We just need to notify them about when we expect to arrive. There's no smoking, which is something we've been looking for all along, but we just haven't mentioned it. And yes, they do take credit cards. So let's go back up and look at the pictures. There isn't a couch, which is a bummer, but they do have a dining room table with comfortable looking chairs, and those can work for us as a compromise. Based on some of the properties we've been seeing here, we're prepared to be making some compromises. Let's select the first option of double or twin room. We can select full bed, but we're not ready to book. Although it might feel nerve-wracking, you can click on the continue to book button at this point and you won't be booking the room. You'll only be taking a look at what the overall costs are, and that's kind of what we want to do here. In the left-hand section, it's going to show all the prices. Now, I don't hold a lot of stock in the original price or even the savings. I'm more focused on the total price, which is $1,669.64. That's what I'm going to walk out paying. It says that the price includes taxes of $90 and that when I hand over my card, they'll be charging me in the local currency. I'm fine with that because that means my credit card company will do the currency exchange, which usually is more favorable than when the vendor does it. And just because we haven't done this yet for any of the properties, we're going to look at this one using their app. And just from this front screen, I can see that they're advertising a lower price. It shows a lower starting price than what it showed on the mobile site. This one shows $1,422 versus $1,580. And it also references a mobile only price that I'm curious about. I'm going to click through to get to the final price for the booking. And look, there's over a $157 savings from booking on the mobile app versus a desktop. We still have to look at what's in the reviews, but it's interesting to see that there actually is a price difference between the two devices. And because this property has a few different room types, we're going to be scrolling through the reviews and focusing on the ones that are about the double room type. As we scroll through, we're not really seeing any huge concerns. And based on all of the challenges that we've had so far, I think that this is probably the one that we like the most. So overall, it was a little disappointing to find out that so many properties required us to pay cash.
I think this happens to us a lot. We don't always get the perfect property, and compromise means we get to stay somewhere in the city, and that's what's really important.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already subscribed, we'd love for you to do that. And the best compliment that you can give to us is to recommend our videos to your friends and family.
And check out findingginamarie.com, where you can find articles, downloads, our free community forum, and you can look at our members' benefits for the behind-the-scenes videos.
Until next time.
Until next time.
There'll be occasions when we need to sleep at an airport just near the hotel.
We're not sleeping at the airport.
Maybe.
No, we're not. Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.